Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 46. I do understand that it's been quite some time since we all probably connected, or I'll say me and Pavan Bhaiya did actually a podcast around what's happening. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening, off cricket as well. So we could not really get much time. But yeah, Comet, the occasion, it's our 46th episode of the cricket podcast. Cricket World Cup 2023, much awaited. Uh, just to say, in October 5th, the biggest prize game in world cricket pretty much starts off, and we know for a fact that while there are significantly lesser ODI games being played, Cricket World Cup still has that uh, I'll say highest level, or probably it sits on the highest pedestal, wherein it's pretty much the pinnacle for any team that has never won it. But for the teams that have won it, for them to kind of assert their dominance, this is pretty much a clear message that they would like to really clearly send. We'll genuinely talk about individual teams, what we feel, irrespective of us supporting India or no. Where do we see each individual team? What players are and what's the combination? Where are they playing, and so on and so forth. But even before we kind of pretty much go into what deep dive into what individual teams are looking at, or how are they looking at, right? I thought maybe we should just talk about Cricket World Cup in general and what it means to me as a 28, 29-year-old. So, just to go back into the memory lane, I'll say my earliest memory of Cricket World Cup goes back to 1999. I was a 5-year-old, barely could really understand the I'll say rules and norms of cricket, but it's all to do with uncles and my father talking about how important the stage is, the fact that there's certain such Tendulkar where there is a certain aura around him. And I don't remember the games, to be honest, in 1999, but I vividly remember the hype and everything that was surrounding. I remember those as a kid. We used to have those color TV premieres. Probably a 21-inch color TV. Wherein probably 40 to 50 people used to gang up and watch the games in England, which were, I'd say, fairly a late start, right? And I also remember the Britannia cricket book and the whole sponsorship that Britannia used to do for cricket. It's like get those goodies, look constantly at Rahul Dravid's images, and that's when I started loving Rahul Dravid as a player, and he still remains one of my favorite player. In fact, my favorite player for sure. And as we see 2023, he's the coach of this Indian cricket team, and we are again going for glory. And uh, you know, let's not even talk about South Asian fans in general. And today, as we sit in Canada, I'm really very closely following the cricket community here, and we all know, people from Sri Lanka, people from Pakistan, people from Bangladesh, everyone are really looking forward to the Cricket World Cup, and it's quite important to us, right? So that's how I see it, and I genuinely wish I could probably go back to India to watch these games. And back when I just started working, my first aim or probably dream was to go to Australia to watch the Cricket World Cup in 2015. Of course, time didn't permit, but I made sure I made it happen in 2019. Watched few Cricket World Cup games in England. It's still an amazing experience that I could think of, and I thought I'll promise myself that I have to make sure that I go to every Cricket World Cup that takes place. And when it's actually happening in my home country, here I am sitting somewhere, probably 12,000, 13,000 miles away, waking up at 2:30 a.m. in the night to watch your favorite team play. That's probably life. And yeah, before I kind of take it to more darker zones, I would just probably hand it over to Pavan to just give us a maybe brief intro of what he feels about the Cricket World Cup. Of course, the game we all know, but what he feels about the World Cup as a tournament, and then of course talk about maybe Australia. Just to start off with our teams. Over to you, Pawan.
Thank you, Ravi. You summed it up nicely as far as your experience is concerned regarding the Cricket World Cup. Yes, it remains the pinnacle in the white ball part of our game. Um, cricket, which is a game of glorious uncertainties, as they say. And my vivid memory of the Cricket World Cup is it in fact was a tournament from where I started watching cricket as a 5-year-old, and that was the '92 World Cup that was held in Australia and New Zealand. And waking up early around 3 a.m. Indian time to watch the matches in New Zealand and around 5 a.m. to watch the matches in Australia will never be forgotten. And that was the first World Cup that was held with players in colored clothing and two new white balls from either ends. Uh, and the image that sticks to my mind is, in fact, the run out by John T. Rhodes, where he leapt across and ran out in Zamam Haq in a game, and such kind of acrobatic stuff in the field was never seen earlier. Along with that, the great Imran Khan holding aloft the Benton and Hedges World Cup trophy at the MCG in front of a record crowd at that point of time will also remain etched in my memory. And then, of course, as the World Cup grew, so did our cricketing maturity as well. We started to get hang of the game and did not just watch it to see our team win, but started developing the right kind of mindset for the game and started understanding the game through the next couple of World Cups in the '90s, um, where again we were pretty much dependent on a couple of players. Um, and then at the turn of the new millennium, especially the Indian team became very, very strong. In 2003, we reached the final. That is my favorite World Cup till date, held in South Africa for a wide variety of reasons. Had got a better understanding of the game. And then, as you know, the white ball game kept on evolving. And then we saw the advent of the T20 game, which became the cash cow, to say the least, for the global game and India per se. And that started diminishing the ODI format a bit. But for kids, like us who have grown up on one-day cricket, when there used to be only two formats of the game that used to exist, the World Cup was the pinnacle of the sport. We used to wait every 4 years just for this mega tournament. And as we speak, it is in the current format just become an extension of the T20 game, with batters getting more aggressive and the bowling side wanting to bowl out the opposition. And gone are those days when you could restrict teams and think of winning matches. So that is one positive ripple effect, I would say, that the T20 game has had on the one-day game. And unfortunately, right now it has become World Cup to World Cup scenario, to say the least, and bilateral one-day cricket in the intervening period of 4 years between the World Cups has become sort of irrelevant. And you have teams mostly looking at their one-day plans, say 12 months away from the World Cup. And that is when this format garners attention. But nevertheless, as I mentioned, it will forever remain, a great format of the sport, which has produced many a legend in both batting and bowling, and will always remain close to our heart. And that's why this upcoming edition in India, it is the first World Cup that will be hosted by India standalone. So it's a big event that's going to happen in the subcontinent. Earlier World Cups that were held in subcontinent were co-hosted by our neighbors. Um, and again, it is the best format. 10 teams are going to play each other once. It's the most fairest format. In fact, this format was first tested on in that '92 World Cup, where there were 9 teams, and then they played amongst each other, with the top 4 teams progressing to the semifinals. And we saw the same format in 2019 as well. So it's going to be a very competitive World Cup. No clear favorites, and that's the beauty of this upcoming tournament, I would say. There are 5 to 6 teams that have a clear, open chance of winning the World Cup. And it's going to be riveting action for the next 45 days or so, I must say, before it culminates at the Narendra Modi Stadium on the 19th of November. So as we steer towards the preview of the teams, we thought, why not start with the most successful team in the history of the Cricket World Cup, and that is Australia, who have won the trophy no less than 5 times, which is a great achievement in itself. And when we see the side that they have put together for this upcoming World Cup, I would say when I categorize their strengths and weaknesses, I have never seen such a huge list of all-round options that this current Australian side has. You always saw one or two all-rounders at the max, in an Australian squad, and their success has been mainly based on having solid batting and solid specialist bowling, both in the pace and spin department. But this side has whole host of options, and that is their biggest strength, I think, in the form of Mitchell Marsh, uh, Green, Stoinis, and Maxwell. So that is the biggest strength as far as I'm concerned. They have so many players who can bat and bowl as well. And of course, their other strength is the top order batting, led by the seasoned David Warner and Steve Smith. And Labuschagne has now got into the scheme of things as a last minute replacement for Aston Agar. And they're hoping for Travis Head to join them at midway of the tournament. He is currently injured, but such has been his pedigree in the last couple of years that they do not want to replace him and have high hopes that he'll return to their squad because he's a vital cog in their wheel. So that's a great amount of batting firepower and all-round power that they have in their side. And that is backed up by the tried and tested pace bowling trio of Stark, Cummins, and Hazelwood, who have been their core group since 2015, I would say. And when we talk about their weakness, the obvious one is the lack of backup pace bowling options. It's a grueling 9-game league phase, so anything could happen to any of these three fast bowlers, and I don't see any capable backup except for Sean Abbott, and even he is not tried and tested in this format and has not delivered on a consistent basis for them. So if anyone of Stark, Cummins, or Hazelwood gets injured or needs rest, they would find it very difficult to find frontline pace bowling options with the squad that they have. And they had a twin spin attack in the form of Adam Zampa and Aston Agar. Aston Agar then became injured and was replaced by Labuschagne. It was strange that a frontline spinner was replaced by a frontline batsman. But nevertheless, Adam Zampa has been one of the best white ball spin bowlers in the last 4 or 5 years. Um, and he should prove to be a good asset for them. He has bowled a lot in India and played in the IPL as well. So have all the players. So I think their uh, second weakness would be a potential backup spin option. They have somebody like a Maxwell, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to provide you 10 overs on every occasion. And of course, to round off the squad, they have Alex Carey and Josh Inglis as the wicket keepers, with Alex Carey being the front choice wicket keeper. He's not in the same league as Adam Gilchrist, and who is going to take away the game from you, which you expect of a modern day batsman keeper. And I say that with uh, conviction that it's not a keeper batsman anymore. It's a batsman keeper as far as the white ball is concerned. So um, you would say that they might not be looking the strongest team, but you can only ignore Australia at your own peril in World Cup tournaments because they tend to raise their games in the world tournaments as we have seen in the past. And they somehow find a way to make it through to the knockout stages. And once they get to those knockout stages, we know how dangerous they can be. So anytime any Australian side cannot be written off, and I see them as one of the strong contenders uh, to make that semi-final spot. So those were my 2 cents on Australia, and I think we can now move on to their trans-Tasman rivals, the Kiwis, New Zealand, and like to hear your view on the Kiwis, Ravi.
Oh yes. So with Kiwis, right? What I really love was the squad announcement to start with. That pretty much builds up the hype for the World Cup, and the fact that it's bloody special, isn't it? And with all the kids and family of the current squad, everyone announcing that the fact that they're the family member or the father is going to play was quite special. What actually surprised me as a build up to was the fact that they rushed Kane Williamson's return, and it was more than certain for a fact that he's just not going to play around. ACLs are pretty bad, need more time than usual. But I think a lot of it has to do with the balance and the fact that this is pretty much going to be possibly uh, maybe the one of the last hurrays for many legendary New Zealand players that have grown through the ranks, the likes of maybe Trent Bolt, Tim Southee, and also Kane Williamson too, for that matter. So there was a lot of buzz in relation to the fitness aspects of it, because Kane Williamson, the man of the tournament from 2019, him missing out, it pretty much ruled out New Zealand to be even perhaps the dark horses with. Also for a fact that Michael Bracewell, he's been one player that have been very closely looking at. Really liked his um, spin expertise too. But him being ruled out, Kane Williamson being ruled out, it didn't necessarily start well for New Zealand. But with New Zealand, they don't just wear dark clothes, but they also dark horses, irrespective of how they actually look on the squad sheet. So I mean, 4 years ago, we pretty well know what New Zealand missed out, right? I mean, barest margins in any bloody sport. A lot of it had to do with maybe fact being that the rules are just not clear. Cricket is an very ambiguous sport. Sometimes it's just random things happening, and then there's no accountability, or there are the constant rules being changed and so on and so forth. So but New Zealand typically have been that one side which always breaks hearts to start with, and then eventually they get their heart broken too. 2011, the quarterfinal against South Africa, if I'm not wrong, was not expected. I mean, New South Africa was probably expected to just sail through, but that didn't necessarily happen. 2015, the beautiful semi-final against South Africa again in Auckland, and that South Africa were good looking good, and then it all ended in heartbreak for Dale Steyn, AB de Villiers, and everyone. And then eventually, New Zealand do not necessarily pose enough threat in the final at MCG. And let's not even talk about 2019. I mean, we knew for a fact that New Zealand were eventually heading to the final. And whatnot. I mean, mainly with the fact that it rained, they get to ball in the morning. The Fury pace attack gets to just walk through or probably rip apart Indian lineup, and eventually in the final, what happened to them, probably makes everyone feel sorry about it. Just to quickly talk about their squad and the balance, with Kane Williamson returning, and the fact that his fitness is supposed to be very well talked about, and I'm not sure if it's a rushed return. It was a necessary return. These are things that pretty much happen in South Asia a lot, with folks not being at the fitness best. And as we speak, we're seeing the fiasco of Tamim Iqbal, Shakib Al Hasan, and the fact that folk players are not at 90%. Probably they're operating at 90%, but are asked to still go ahead and play because of their experience. But with New Zealand, I've been reading States comments. The fact that Ken Williamson has made a miraculous return just talks about the kind of commitment and all the efforts and energies that he's been trying to manifest. Talking about the squad, Kane Williamson, Devon Conway. Devon Conway's recent knock in England has to be talked about. Excellent balance there. Mark Chapman, a rising star, pretty much there. Matt Henry, Tom Latham, Darren Mitchell, and Jimmy Neesham too. Let's not even talk about. I mean, we have to talk about Glenn Phillips, and let's not even underestimate his ability to do well on these tracks, and the fact that he plays for Sunrisers Hyderabad, and he's explored grounds and he's been practicing elsewhere. Um, Similar to Australia, right? We see a lot of all-rounder options, a lot of all-rounder options. Uh, you know, um, uh, Matt Henry, Daryl Mitchell, Jimmy Neesham, Glenn Phillips, Rachin Ravindra. We've seen how we did against Pakistan at Hyderabad. Mitch Santner, Ish Sodhi can do okay, and then Tim Southee can strike the ball here and there. So the balance is actually very appreciated, and the fact that so if someone asks me, are New Zealand going to finish in the top four? Um, point is, with any other team, I could say yes or no. I'm 90% sure or 10% sure. But with New Zealand, right, they rise up to the occasion. There's a lot of emotion playing around. They love their cricket. Their cricket is very special. Uh, and all of these factors really matter to them, and they pretty much rise up to the occasion. So if you compare it with the 2019 World Cup, I personally feel they're not the same. Maybe the 2019 World Cup team was slightly better given the form and the fact that Tim Southee is just returning from his finger injury that I think was something that he probably developed in England, and also for the fact that Kane Williamson lacks that game time to actually go there and play in the top occasion. And to start with, they play England, the defending champions, and in my honest opinion, the favorites. I mean, while I know for a fact that probably there are no specific favorites to start with, but England probably a notch above any other team. And then the fact that they start there in Ahmedabad, is a high pressure encounter for New Zealand to start with. So, my 2 cents on New Zealand there, Pawan Bhaiya. Over to you.
Thank you, Ravi, for that review of New Zealand team. And yes, I guess the biggest weakness for them would be to carry the burden and baggage of 2015 and 2019, where they made the final in two successive events. And the core of both those World Cups is still intact. And maybe this is the final chance of their golden generation. And whether they have it in them to reach the final for the third time in a row and then get their hands on the coveted trophy remains to be seen. But they more or less seem to have all their bases covered. Moving on to another Southern Hemisphere team, and this is South Africa. The perennial chokers, one would like to tell about them, who have had a tryst of misfortune, we would like to say, since they came back into international cricket and onto the world scene since that 92 World Cup. We have seen how the horrible rain rule might have robbed them of a victory there. Then in 96, they won all their league matches only to be thwarted away by a brilliant Brian Lara 100 in the quarterfinal in Karachi. And then we all know in 99 what transpired, and they were just within a whisker of reaching the final, and who knows, getting their hands on the trophy. Barely missed qualifying for the Super Sixes in 2003, where they messed up their Duckworth Lewis calculations. They had to be 1 run above the par score and not at par score. Somehow they miscalculated that. And then in 2007, they reached the semifinals and again met their nemesis Australia and lost that semifinal probably within the first hour or so by losing 5 wickets for 40 runs. 2011, again, they top their group and lose to the Kiwis, unfancied opponents, like you mentioned earlier in the quarterfinals. And the last two World Cups have been the ones to forget for them. But they started to develop a really good white ball team, courtesy their performance in the T20 format. And when I talk about their strengths in the current squad, it has to be their batting firepower. At the top of the order, you have Quinton de Kock, who has announced his decision to retire from the ODI format after the World Cup, and we know how destructive he can be at the top of the order. And then you have the likes of Aiden Markram, Killer Miller, and Rassie van der Dusen. Um, and to round it off, Henry Klaassen, who has been in awesome form of late and one of the best players of spin bowling, I dare say, in modern day white ball cricket. So they have considerable amount of batting firepower in the top and middle order, I would say. But where they struggle is, and this was one of their strengths in the last 20 years, was their lower middle order batting and having those all-round options. Gone are those days of having the likes of Lance Klusener, Sean Pollock, Mark Boucher, Brian McMillan in the lower middle order, where they could pull a rabbit out of the hat and win the game for the team from any situation. So they've not got too much of batting depth, I would say. Another area that serves them really good is their frontline pace bowling department. The likes of Kagiso Rabada, Lungi Ngidi, and Marco Jansen provide a lot of teeth to their bowling attack. Marco Jansen, with his left arm angle, provides another option. Um, it's tragic in the end that the likes of Henrik Nokia got injured and will not be able to take part in this tournament. Otherwise, his presence would have added even more venom to that pace attack. So in his place, they've got this young tearaway fast bowler, Gerald Coetzee, um, who by the looks of things looks very sharp, but might be very, very difficult to, uh, you know, perform in subcontinental conditions, which will be new for him. So let's see how he goes about that business. And when it comes to some glaring weaknesses in the squad, I would say at the top of the order, the role of Temba Bavuma. Yes, he's the captain. I don't know, with due respect to him, if he would warrant a place in the side if he was not the captain. But I think he will try to play the holding role, and like the other batters, to take those risks. And the batting lineup would like to build the innings around him. So that's the role I see for him at the top of the order. Um, they have very, very thin options in backup batting. They've got Reza Henriks, who could be replaced in the top order. But again, you wouldn't want to replace Quinton de Kock with him unless and until QDK is injured. And like I mentioned, South Africa always used to have an assembly of all-rounders, and they very seldom have in this squad. The only all-rounder of note I see is Andal Feflukayo, again, who has not been a proven performer per se on a consistent basis for them. But they've got a well-rounded spin attack in the form of Tabare Samsi and Kesam Maharaj, one left-arm orthodox and one left-arm Chinaman. Um, so they should be um, very well served in those middle overs where it is key to take those wickets. Again, they have to find a way to win crunch games and qualify for the semi-finals, and that'll be the biggest task ahead of them. They can go all the way, but again, they need to have some amount of luck on their side, I would say, to progress. But you cannot ignore them. Um, with this, I think we will move on to the defending champions, that is England, and like to hand it over to you, Ravi.
Oh yes. So just to probably touch upon South Africa and the fact that they can't be ignored, right? In the recent series, right? I mean, I can't freaking believe that, in every other game, there's someone who's actually turned up. Henry Klassen, um, Aiden Markram, bad form, but he did well. Tembe Bauma in one of those games. Bowling was operating fine. And then David Miller, Comet the man, Comet the occasion, whatnot. So yeah, South Africa cannot be ruled out. And then just to quickly go towards England, right? England is all drama. Let's face it, right? They're pretty much here to entertain. I mean, even in test cricket, even in red ball cricket, with all the hype and the whole love for the crowd there, for traditional setups, people being cheered for just leaving the ball or probably a nudge towards square leg or a third man, right? So let's face it. I mean, if they're able to convince that crowd that this is the brand of cricket that needs to kind of sustain and go ahead in limited overs cricket, which is going to see that more coming there. And the fact that Ben Stokes is back and he's back in style, and the kind of balance that they have overall. And I made the statement a while ago, and now even now I'll pretty much still make that statement, saying England start as favorites. Their exposure for all their IPL prowess as well, the fact that they're exposed to all these tracks, and in case of maybe an India game at a Lucknow, I'm probably expecting a spin track wherein India has to prove their prowess. Maybe we'll start Kuldeep, Ashwin, and also Jaddu there. But England pretty much has a beautiful spin bowling lineup too. So in neutral venues, in against neutral teams, if it's a very say a balanced track, it's England all the way. And the only way to probably beat England would need to kind of do well in all three departments. Of course, it goes as a cliche, but the fact is they're bloody good in all three departments. To just quickly talk about, uh, I'll start off with their all rounders, right? I mean, the all rounders are key, right from the World T20, and the fact that the whole air of T20 cricket is kind of spreading to 50 over formats as well. And the fact that 300s are no more past scores, you need to get to 350, 360. Their all-rounders are Sam Curran, Moeen Ali, Ben Stokes, Mark Wood, Chris Wokes. And lastly, Liam Livingstone as well, who can spin a ball here and there, and he's going to be critical. Let's not forget Adil Rashid can bat too. We're talking about, say, I don't know, 7 players of top 11 who gonna be there, and the rest being Josh Butler or probably Johnny Bairstow, in a way, David Malan and Joe Root as well. So Harry Brook may sit out, never know. Gus Atkinson is a promising player. Risa Copley, David Wiley. Well, talking about the squad is like, giving me shivers. Probably we miss, I don't know. It's going to be tricky, and I think we're going to see some 420s, 430s from England, possibly. And the fact that they're so good in the seam bowling attack, they're so good with their balance, maybe have 6 to 7 bowling options who can do the 50 over quota. It's England is probably the top, and then you know it's very exciting to see their journey, and the fact that they're going to play New Zealand very soon is quite promising in the opener, and hopefully we get a full game, and we see England rise to the occasion too. It's going to be exciting. Your quick thoughts on England, and then maybe we can talk about Netherlands and wrap up the show one way or the first episode. Yeah.
Yeah, England have been the side to beat in any format of white ball cricket in the last 5 years or so. Since that 2015 World Cup debacle, Ian Morgan developed a style of play which has been embraced by his fellow players, the administration, and the general English public, which has been orthodox by nature. And that has reaped its dividends. And I agree with all that you said, that they are looking strong in each and every department. But I think their biggest weakness is their one-dimensional approach of attack, attack, attack. The only player who looks like bringing some sort of sanity or stability to that batting lineup will be Joe Root, and in my eyes, he'll be a key fulcrum in that revolving door of attacking batsmen. He'll sort of try to hold the fort for them. And I know many people are predicting huge scores from them, and that might happen in the league stages. But come the later half of the tournament or the later league matches, when it gets to the crunch and in the knockouts, I doubt whether we would see such kind of high scores. Remember, they were in red hot form in 2019, but uh, they had to chase only 240 in the World Cup final, and that is what World Cup pressure does to you. India had to chase 240, the same kind of score in that semi-final with that amazing batting lineup, and we know what happened. So um, definitely one of the top favorites, and I think the only team that can defeat England in such form is England themselves. I don't think they have a very prudent plan B in place. So let's see what happens when they are, 40-4 or 40-5 on any given day.
Indeed, the depth is tested. Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Moving on to wrap up this episode, we'll be moving to the other team that's going to be representing Europe per se in this World Cup, and that is the Oranje, the Dutch, who are perennial favorites as far as the FIFA World Cup is concerned, but they have been giving good account of themselves in cricket as well. And kudos to them. They came through a very, very tough qualification campaign and booked their spot at the expense of the West Indies. And when you look at their side, they've got good amount of batting firepower in there, albeit a couple of South Asian expats helping them out in that area, the likes of Vikramjit Singh from Punjab and Teja Nedamanuru, our very own Andhra guy, have been sort of backbone of that Netherlands batting lineup. And then Bas de Leede, son of Tim de Leede, ex-Netherlands player as well, along with their captain Scott Edwards, who is also the wicketkeeper, and Max O'Dowd, form the main fulcrum of that batting lineup and can be very, very, very aggressive on a given day. They are very well served in their spin departments. All our cricket folks will be aware of Roloff van der Merwe, who has represented South Africa as well and is representing the Dutch in this World Cup, who is a handy left-arm spinner and a batsman as well. They got a young spinner again of Asian descent, Aryan Dutt, who is very, very good. And they've got a good pace attack, Logan Van Beek, who wields a long handle with the bat and was very destructive in that, um, you know, uh, shootout with the West Indies in the qualifier. So all in all, you know, they will have good amount of experience representing their country in this World Cup, and will get to learn a lot in this 9 matches per se. I will not rule out an upset from them. One upset here or there, that team might, feel unlucky to lose at the hands of the Dutch, but I potentially see a banana peel skin kind of a game for one or two oppositions where they can give them a scare, and they'll bring a lot of color to the tournament, and that is what you want to see at the end of the day. So all in all, these 5 teams will like to provide the best possible challenge to the other 5 subcontinental teams whom we are going to discuss in the next episode.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your views there, Pawan Bhaiya. Of course, we're gonna catch up in the next episode. See you all there. Thanks for
Thank you.
tuning in.